Well, hi everyone. Thanks, Kara. Welcome to Digital Credentials, a key tool for community college success. I'm Cynthia Wilson. I'm the Vice President for Learning and Chief Impact Officer at the League for Innovation in the community college. And for those of you who may not know, the League is an international nonprofit organization committed to cultivating innovation in the community and technical colleges. And you can learn more about the work that we do at www.league.org. We at the League are very excited about our collaboration with IMS Global Learning Consortium in presenting this two-part webinar series. In the past, the League and IMS Global have partnered on surveys of community college presidents and IT leaders. We are pleased with the response to this webinar. It's very exciting. We've had quite a few people sign up for both of the webinars in the series, and we look forward to future collaborations that serve our members as well. In case you missed the first part of the series, it was held last fall. It showcased the teaching and learning benefits of pervasive EdTech interoperability standards and also initiatives for accelerating next generation digital learning environments. And it was recorded. And I think Kara's putting a URL in the chat, so you can go back, you can see where that is and go check it out when you get an opportunity. Today's webinar is part 2, and it showcases ways institutions are enabling educational innovation and achievement in community college programs through verifiable, interoperable digital credentials. And I want to welcome our panelists, who are Cynthia Proctor, Director of Communications and Academic Policy Development in the Office of the Provost for the State University of New York; Mindy Cole, who's Associate Dean of Adult Learning for Academic Affairs at SUNY Ulster; Stephen Gantz, Policy Associate in Educational Technology and Open Education for the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges; and our moderator, Kelly Hoyland, who's Higher Education Program Manager at IMS Global. And I want to thank our panelists and our moderator. We all look forward to your comments and presentations, and now I'm going to turn the program over to Kelly.
Thank you, Cynthia, for that introduction. And as Cynthia mentioned, we're very excited for our collaboration with the League for Innovation. IMS Global Learning Consortium is happy to work with the League and help support those community colleges and meet the needs of their members. So with that, you'll hear more from me at the end of the presentation, but I'm actually going to turn it over to Cynthia Proctor from SUNY to get us started today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I just wanted to share with you a little bit about SUNY. We are the largest comprehensive system of public higher education in the US, and that means with our 64 campuses across New York State, they include community colleges, technology colleges, comprehensive colleges, specialized institutions, R1 research universities. In fact, in our portfolio, we have 30 community colleges. And I was so excited when I saw the title of today's session, because I think micro-credentials are great tools actually for all institutions of higher education. But I think for community colleges, we've seen that they definitely have, I would say, a little bit of a head start. What we're talking about when we think about micro-credentials are things that you've all been thinking about for some time. And with that said, let's talk about what micro-credentials are. So micro is the key piece of this. They are credentials that are generally smaller than a minor or certificate or degree, and they're awarded to intentionally recognize specific skills and competencies that have been mastered. They're often comprised of courses from registered degree programs or long-standing non-credit programs. They can be online, in the classroom, or hybrid. They're often represented by a digital badge, and you'll hear more about that today. Particular IMS Global's open badge standard, which at SUNY we strongly believe in. One of the things that folks often ask me is, okay, well, that all sounds good, but what does a micro-credential really look like? If you look at SUNY's offerings, you'll see micro-credentials that range from 3 to 4 4-credit courses. You might see 2 4-credit courses plus an applied learning experience bundled together as a micro-credential. We have one institution that has broken down 2 degree programs into stackable micro-credentials to allow online learners to pursue a degree in smaller, maybe less intimidating pieces, and those micro-credentials stack together toward a degree. We also have several campuses who are using non-credit courses or non-credit program or boot camp as a micro-credential. And in those cases, we have a particular focus on how we can move students from non-credit to credit. So if that's the case, we're using things like prior learning assessment and credit by evaluation to award those recipients who are taking non-credit micro-credentials academic credit where we can. We started thinking about micro-credentials as a potential option for SUNY for our broad, diverse campuses because there's so many different uses for them. When you think about breaking apart pieces of curriculum or highlighting pieces of curriculum, you can immediately see that we can use that in a number of ways. For example, we could motivate existing students to persist by recognizing achievement of particularly complicated coursework, right? And giving them something tangible before they reach the end of the semester or the end of their degree to say, hey, you've mastered this, you know, this is great, you're ready to take the next step. We can use micro-credentials to add complementary skill sets. So imagine the computer science major who takes a micro-credential in business communication. Or imagine the English major who takes a micro-credential in business communication. Or we could have an accountant take a micro-credential in data analytics. So there's lots of ways that we can help students stand out in the marketplace by using micro-credentials. We also think that micro-credentials are a great way to attract new students to our campuses, particularly adult learners who maybe have had a little college or no college, and they need a path to come back. And by using smaller pieces of curriculum, we've heard from them that it's less scary, it's less intimidating. So that's a bonus. We've also seen micro-credentials as a way to serve our business partners in new ways. Now, community colleges have had long-standing relationships with business and industry partners. You've worked together for a long time. But today we're seeing greater interest from businesses in upskilling their incumbent workers, ongoing professional development, retraining, you know, with advances in technology. And we've even had employers come to us and say, you know, we need individuals who have this specific skill set, you know, can you help us? And we've been able to design a micro-credential around it. So micro-credentials, you know, became very interesting. We saw them as a potential opportunity to help us with, you know, some challenges and things that we knew were going to impact our institutions. You know, these are things I'm sure that you've heard and seen before, but we know that it's projected that the college-going age is going to increase. In fact, we expect to see a 22% increase in college students aged 35 and over by fall 2025. We know that there's a demand for lifelong learning because folks are going to have to be retrained. They're going to have to learn additional skill sets. We know that there's this refrain that we hear from business and industry sometimes about college graduates not necessarily having the skills they'd hoped that they would have. And we also know that we have lots of folks who need some type of credential to succeed. In New York State, we have nearly 6 million individuals aged 25 and over who have a high school diploma or equivalency, but have not yet earned a college degree. So we're dealing with all of these issues, challenges and opportunities. And again, micro-credentials kept coming up as a possible solution. in a system as large as SUNY, when we identify something like that, it's not like we can say tomorrow, okay, we're going to launch a micro-credential program, right? We have 64 institutions, we have a commitment to shared governance, and we work from the ground up. So our process is to create a university-wide task force with representatives across all sectors of institutions, across all positions on a university campus, and we study the issue. And so we had a wonderful group of folks who looked at micro-credentials and said, yes, you know, there's a way that SUNY could do this, could take advantage of the opportunities of micro-credentials, and vitally important, do it in a quality way. So they made a recommendation to the SUNY trustees that they adopt a micro-credential policy that was passed in January of 2018. On this page, you'll see a link to our webpage. It's suny.edu/microcredentials. I encourage you to look at that page. It has everything that I'm going to mention to you today and more. Lots of resources if you're just thinking about launching a micro-credential program or if you're at a point where you want to scale it. To the task force's credit, they really wanted to create a quality framework for our campuses to utilize. And so what you see here are the 6 components of SUNY's policy. We don't have time for me to go into all of them today. I'm going to talk about the first 2. But I encourage you, again, to visit our webpage for more detail. I think the most important thing that the task force did was to set a SUNY-specific definition of micro-credentials. As some of you may know, the taxonomy around micro-credentials can be confusing. Oftentimes the term micro-credential is used interchangeably with badge or digital badge. There's often varying degrees or levels of micro-credentials. So we wanted our campuses, our students, our business partners to be really clear about what SUNY meant when it said, here's a SUNY micro-credential. So these are the 4 components of our definition. SUNY micro-credentials verify specific skills and competencies earned. And that means that these are real learning experiences with learning outcomes, assessments. We can link through a digital badge to examples of student work. And we're not necessarily talking about recognizing things like registering for a conference or attending, you know, one session on diversity, for example, right? We're talking about something a little heavier, something that really assesses learning. The second component of our definition is that it's endorsed by the issuing campus. So at some point in the process, it has to be signed off on by the department and provost or president, right? So it was important in talking with our business partners that they knew that SUNY stood behind a micro-credential in the same way that we stand behind our degree programs. The third component of our definition really had to do with the task force's concern that SUNY do this in a high quality way. And so when SUNY develops degree programs, those programs are reviewed through established faculty governance processes. So we made the decision that SUNY micro-credentials would be reviewed through faculty governance processes. And I've had an opportunity to present on SUNY's policy across the country, and this is the thing that usually surprises most people. They weren't sure how we managed that. They weren't sure how it would work. Would it slow things down? Would it complicate things? I really, commend SUNY faculty governance, governance leaders. They've really embraced this, and they've worked with our faculty to, in many cases, streamline processes for micro-credentials that are based on courses already approved in registered degree programs, and have just allowed them to be innovative, but assure quality. So that's worked out well for us. And the final component of our definition is that we want SUNY micro-credentials to be meaningful and high quality. And so what does that mean? Well, we want our campuses to be strategic in how they use micro-credentials. You know, we don't think that every course and every program should equate to a micro-credential, right? These should be data-driven decisions, just like everything else. We want the micro-credential to have meaning beyond the institution, to have real value to the student. We want them to be portable and stackable. And with respect to portability, we're relying on the IMS Global Open Badge Standard so that our badges are portable and students can email them and post them online and share them and retain them. And wherever possible, we want our micro-credentials to have value in and of themselves, but also where possible stack together with other micro-credentials to lead to an initial or advanced degree. The policy also sets a series of guiding principles for micro-credential development, and a few of these really repeat the definition, right? Academic quality is paramount, faculty governance required, have to be portable and stackable, but there are other things too, right? Micro-credentials should be consistent with campus mission, informed by market data, aligned with field and industry standards. We want them to be flexible and innovative, and many of our institutions are thinking about offering micro-credentials online on shorter time schedules to try to respond in particular to adult learners. And we also think micro-credentials help maximize partnerships. Yes, with business and industry, also with P12, also with community partners. Before I leave you, I want to end with just a few examples of micro-credentials that have been launched by SUNY community colleges. You're going to hear in depth from one of our community colleges that's just done an extraordinary job with Mindy Cole in just a minute. But I'll just share a few quick other examples just so you get a sense of the scale of this. So one of our community colleges has now received a total of 3 grants from the National Science Foundation to develop micro-credentials centered on drone use across various industries. And each one of the micro-credentials is a pathway to an associate degree in remotely piloted aircraft systems. And so this idea of getting grant funding for micro-credential development is something I encourage you to keep in mind. We've seen our institutions receive grant funding from the NSF, NIH, the Federal Health and Human Services Department, state agencies. So there is support for micro-credential development out there. An example of a unique business partnership, one of our institutions was approached by the local casino, and they needed trained employees in their kitchen, cafeteria, kiosk. And so normally the community college would do that as part of their continuing education work, and they would contract with the casino and that would be it. In this case, they decided to frame this as micro-credentials, and they offered the casino an opportunity to have their employees participate in micro-credentials that would equate to credit in the associate degree in culinary arts. And so the employer was so thrilled about this that they started with 3 courses. Now they're paying for 5. And I had a chance to talk to some of the students, and they, never imagined that they would be on a pathway to getting a college degree. Just never even imagined it. And they were so appreciative of this opportunity, and they were enjoying it. They were enjoying the college courses. And so we really see that as a huge win-win. And we hope that we can retain those students in the culinary arts program. We have another example is small business management. This is a micro-credential developed in response to requests from community members who were interested in starting a small business, starting an entrepreneurial venture. And so the community college worked to develop a 3-course micro-credential that does also stack to an associate degree in business administration or business management. And the last example I'll share is a direct support credential for a direct care of individuals with disabilities. Many community colleges offer a human services degree. What we're finding is that providers of human services in New York State in particular, but I imagine this is not a New York State alone trend, have trouble keeping employees, and they have trouble advancing those employees to supervisory roles, to moving them up in the ranks of healthcare work. And so several of our community colleges have started partnerships with local direct care service providers to provide micro-credentials for their current employees that again give those individuals credit toward an associate degree in human services. And we're looking at how we can possibly stack that. So if they're successful in earning their associate's degree, then how can we move them to a 4-year? How can we move them and continue to advance them? Because New York, like so many states, has a severe shortage of nurses and other healthcare professionals. So we're really looking at micro-credentials as this tool that we've been able to use in so many different ways. I think I'm going to stop there. Again, suny.edu/micro-credentials. And it is my great privilege to now turn things over to Mindy Cole from SUNY Ulster Community College.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you everyone for being here today. And I'm very excited to tell you a little bit about what we've done at our community college. SUNY Ulster is one of the smallest schools in the SUNY system. We are located about 100 miles north of New York City in the Kingston area. We have 2 campuses, one at Stone Ridge and one in downtown Kingston. We have about 3,000 students at our college. On the credit side and on the non-credit side as well. And we introduced our micro-credential program a couple of years ago, and we have 4 in our business department, 3 in our computer science department, and then have recently introduced 3 in the non-credit/credit side in advanced manufacturing. So that's our latest addition to our micro-credential family. And I do want to say that the work that SUNY did on putting together the framework and putting together the guidelines was enormously helpful to me as I was given the task or took on the task of introducing these to my campus and getting the effort, kind of underway, because the guidelines really framed what we needed to do. So I was able to very much so take the framework to our academic senate and present it with great clarity, and then build a process and policy here at SUNY Ulster for how we would develop and approve and implement micro-credentials in our own campus. So that was extremely helpful. So I really urge anybody who is going to start with micro-credentials to, to look at the SUNY policy and the work that was done by SUNY, and that's really a place to start so that all your campuses and all of your departments are on the same page with what a micro-credential is and how to move forward. One of the very important elements that we communicate across our campus to anyone thinking of developing a micro-credential is to make sure that there is data and input from our community partners in the development of the micro-credential, because then you know that it really will be valuable to the students to take to the marketplace. So for instance, on the business side, we have a a business advisory council that comes in. It's a group of local business people, and they meet with us, the business department, during the year, and they give us input and feedback on our programs. And we really use that information, and we take it very seriously because they're the ones who are hiring our graduates. And one year they said to us, you know, your students put on their resumes that they are proficient in Excel and QuickBooks. And some of them are proficient and some of them are less proficient. And they said that they would like us to be able to attest to that, to those competencies, so that they know when they're hiring SUNY Ulster graduates, you know, what they can do in those two important business tools. So we took that as an amazing opportunity to develop a micro-credential in accounting computer skills. So we put together 4 courses that are in our business and entrepreneurial studies program, in 2 courses in Excel and 2 courses in accounting and QuickBooks. And we made a micro-credential. And it's not enough to just pass the courses. The students have to actually demonstrate that proficiency to us in the business department before we award the micro-credential, so that when they take that credential out into the marketplace, we are attesting that they are competent and not just saying that they took the courses at the school. The advanced manufacturing micro-credentials, our industry partner there is the Council of Industry, which is a Hudson Valley Manufacturing Association. And so we have 3. We have one in CNC operation, we have one in CNC programmer, and one in AutoCAD. And I am not an expert in these areas, but I do know what CNC is. It's a computer numerically controlled equipment that is used for drilling, cutting, shaping materials, that type of thing. And we have a lot of growth in manufacturing here in the Hudson Valley. So this was very well developed and very well received. And so half of the students in these programs are on the credit side and half are on the non-credit side. So we are actually, as Cindy said, working with PLA and assessment like that to give the students who are on the credit side the credit in their engineering programs. So that has been a pretty successful new effort in terms of micro-credentials here at SUNY Ulster. Our Human Services Department is working on one. They're waiting for a certificate to be approved by SUNY so that their micro-credentials can fit into the certificate, and then that fits into the associate degree. So there are other areas of our campus that are planning micro-credentials. What I do is I work very closely hand in hand with any department that is working on a micro-credential, and I review and make sure that they really have a handle on the SUNY guidelines, so that when they prepare their micro-credential, it does meet the SUNY guidelines. Then what happens is it is approved by the department, and then it goes to our curriculum committee, which is our faculty governance process for approving all curriculum. And then once the curriculum committee approves them, then they go to our Chief Academic Affairs Officer, and then it goes to the president of our college. So that is how we process these micro-credentials through governance at the school. Lots of opportunities. We, just like Cynthia said, we are very, very embedded with our business community, our nonprofit community, our manufacturing community. And so we are always talking about micro-credentials in the community and looking for opportunities to partner with organizations in our community. The challenges include communication, making sure that everyone on campus understands micro-credentials, how to develop them, what are the guidelines, and communicating with students the same way. Students have to understand what they are. and what it's going to take to earn a micro-credential. So those are, most of our challenges, but, it's just a constant drumbeat, and it does take some time. If your community is not really familiar with micro-credentials, it does take a little bit of time for everyone to be on the same page. So again, those guidelines are very helpful. And I would be happy to answer any questions either now or in the future. And once the moderator opens the webinar for questions, and I can, put my email address in the chat. So if anyone has questions for me at any other time, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mindy. As we transition between speakers to the next speaker, we'll do a couple questions. So these came in while you were sharing, both you and Cindy. So the first one was, are students advised or guided towards recommended micro-credential paths that may fit with their majors?
So again, as I said, the challenge is making sure that everyone on campus understands micro-credentials. So I think in the areas where we have micro-credentials, yes, there's a very deep understanding of them, and we do communicate with our students, and we do talk to our students about them. In areas of our college where they haven't really taken on micro-credentials yet, we're still in that communication process. So once they work through a micro-credential and have it, then they would be in a better position to be able to communicate with students about them.
And I'll just share very quickly, I do think that micro-credentials, it's a communications challenge and opportunity, right? And so one of the things that we've talked to campuses about is be sure you have a web page, right? One for students and probably an internal page for faculty. Be sure that your advisors are aware of micro-credential opportunities, your admissions directors. It really is so important to have a consistent communications approach so that the messaging you're sending to faculty, to students, to potential partners is consistent. And that takes a little bit of planning, right? And it means making sure that you've reached out to all the appropriate folks on campus. But once that sort of initial framework is in place, then we can not only better advise students about micro-credential opportunities, but from a planning perspective, identify opportunities for additional micro-credentials, right? Polling alumni, polling additional partners, looking at what micro-credentials we have versus what micro-credentials the campus down the road has, identifying holes and filling them.
Great, there's a few more questions. I might hold these till the end of the session, just so we can get through the rest of the presentation. If we have time, we'll come back to them. Otherwise, we'll try to answer some of them in chat during the next session. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Steve Gantz from the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges to share how they're using micro-credentials or digital credentials.
Okay, I'm with the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. It's a state agency in Olympia, Washington, and where this agency coordinates and directs Washington State's system of 34 public CTCs, and it's just the community and technical colleges. It's not the four-year colleges. We have 363,000 students that we serve each year. It's about 170,000 FTE, but they're distributed amongst CTE, career and technical ed, basic ed, adult education, continuing ed, AA degrees, and AA transfer degrees. So it's all over the place. We also have and then the divisions are in our education division. We, of course, have other divisions here too, but is workforce, which deals, as it sounds, with workforce and a lot of our federal funding through that gets funneled to community colleges, and educational technology and open education. That's the department I'm in the division. And then we have a whole department that deals with basic and adult ed. And then we have a student success department and a research department, which plays a role of institutional research on a community college, but across all the community and technical colleges. So next, so here's the locations, and they're spread out all over the state. But as you can see, many of them are focused in the Seattle area, from the I-5 corridor from Olympia north, and a few in the eastern part of the state where there's less population. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a digital badge, and this may be, what you already know, but I'm going over this just to say this is kind of what the thinking was when we started our digital badge effort. So it's and you can find these definitions and stuff anywhere. It's a digital representation of a skill, learning achievement. They provide concrete evidence and proof of skills and achievements because there's metadata inside. So the interest in badges is that they in principle, create a more complete representation of an individual's learning and experience. It's more than a transcript, or it can be used for things that don't show up on a transcript just yet. So that's kind of one part of the interest in digital badges. Now, it's important, I think, to distinguish what's an open digital badge, and it's the open digital badge is an agreed upon public technical specification. And of course, that's now being managed through IMS Global. It's just recently, they're working on the Open Badges 2.1 specification. And any badge that conforms to this open specification can be shared with any software that handles open badges. So when we started our badge effort, that was kind of the first thing we did, was to say, hey, is the software we're going to use, can that be used, can that handle open badges? And the promise of open badges is that earners can take their badges anywhere. As long as that other platform handle open badges and produces open badges, then it doesn't matter for the earners. In our case, we chose the Badger software, and they produce open badges. Our earners are not required to use the Badger system to hold their earned badges. They can go put them in other systems, and more systems are available now that'll backpacks or wallets or whatever that will hold the open digital badges. I'll talk about that a little more in a bit. So thanks for the SUNY thing on the micro-credential things. We haven't really actually done a lot of work in terms of defining micro-credential and what it would mean for our colleges. That's kind of upcoming. We haven't done this level of work on micro-credentials across our colleges. So I'm using a kind of an abstract sense here. Since badges can represent any accomplishment in any grain size. Micro-credential is, as SUNY pointed out, there tend to be more discrete achievements, smaller achievements. Badges could represent a degree, for instance, but we don't really talk about a degree as a micro-credential. Now, one of the things propelling interest in badges is that they're kind of contrasted with grades. And we're a CTC, a community college system, and our employers are not very happy with transcripts. Grades and courses don't really signal much of what people learned. And so they're really hungry for things that tell them more about what students, what employees can do. And so that's another interest in badges. We just need a mechanism to contrast with grades, a mechanism that includes representing a lot of information, evidence or assessments and other things that the student had to complete. I like this term, talkative credentials. They circulate. They're in itself, has all the information you need to understand it. You don't. It's not really listed on a, I mean, it can be listed on a transcript, but it's, you know, a transcript is a record across a college, whereas a badge could stand alone. So we've chosen to focus right now on badges for professional development. And part of that is just a scoping thing, as we've seen from the SUNY effort, and I think I'll just have them come out here and help us with that when we get around to it. We focused on badges for professional development because that was something we could manage through our agencies pretty well. We were already doing a lot of professional development. We also wanted a way, we have a lot of adjuncts in community college. We also wanted a way to recognize particularly our adjuncts for the learning that they did. And also we wanted a way to track that professional development. We had some ways of doing that. You know, when people register, we keep registration lists and stuff, but we were interested in badges as a way to say, hey, who's earning what? So we could actually just report on our badges. So that's why we focused on the badges for professional development. As we've worked on this, we have been constantly in mind of how would we translate this to the college environment with actual students. But for right now, it's for faculty professional and staff professional development. And in preparing this, this presentation, there was a post just real recently, just a few days ago, that about, you know, training for faculty and online pedagogy and with LMSs. And Maria Anderson made this post that ties in exactly with the way we were thinking about it. Adjuncts should be allowed to get the same certifications that you would offer full-time instructors. And then it's very hard for adjuncts to keep up with how to teach online courses at every school. We had the case where we had adjuncts teaching in multiple schools. At each school was a requirement to take a teaching online course. And they, you know, the ones that had taken the teaching online course at other colleges are going, wait a minute, I've already done this. Well, I'm sorry, our college, it's a policy that you can't teach for us until you've taken our course. And that was irritating. So that was, again, one of the things we were trying to do for our adjuncts, to say, well, if you could actually accept a badge for that from the other colleges. We had the interesting thing that we actually had a few colleges that were saying, that actually put a list of things and said, oh, I know, you know, college X over there actually has a great online teaching thing. So if you took it there, then we'll accept that. So they already had a way of kind of accepting other colleges' training without using badges. So to date, one of the things we did was the licensed Badger Pro for all 34 of our community technical colleges. So we basically said, well, let's just get badges and badge pathways, I'll talk about that in a second, into all our community colleges so people can play with it. We haven't really leveraged that much yet, but it does allow us to quickly work with any of our community colleges, and they've got the same platform as we're using, and it makes it easy for us to help them. We've issued nearly 2,000 badges since last July when we started issuing badges, and we issue badges in basically 3 different areas that we cover, which is document accessibility, you know, Word, PDFs, HTML, which includes Canvas pages, Canvas LMS pages, open educational resources. Washington State is a big open educational resource state. And of course, we do our own online course design and technology, as well as quality matters training in the state. So here's, you know, you're not meant to read this necessarily. You can go to the website and look at these. These are a couple of example badges. On the left, you see a badge that says it's understanding accessibility. It's kind of meant to be a introductory thing that says, here's what accessibility is. This is why it's important, and what does it mean for your college, and how to, you know, how to understand what the issues are around accessibility. And then one of our accessibility skills badges, which in this case is Word, and it's our first first part of our word accessibility, and it helps. You know, it's a badge that has people apply headings and lists and tables and alt text in Microsoft Word. So then we're also using a thing called pathways, and we like this, and we think there's a great potential for this. You probably hear pathways in other areas too. It's an important concept. This pathway is a Badger pathway. So Badger Pro allows you to have pathways where you can have sets of badges. They're not stackable in the true stackable sense, but you can put them in a path and have them combine in particular ways. So in this case, so this is a fairly simple path. In this case, up at the top, you see 2 badges that are required, and that's accessible design and understanding accessibility. So when you get those, so those are 2 prerequisites. You have to earn those 2 badges. The ones in the bottom are 6 badges, but you only have to earn 3 of those. So you can kind of pick and choose. So if you're a web designer, or in our case, we have some of our communications people who are posting PDFs. Well, they probably ought to do the accessibility skills on PDFs. They're not actually creating PowerPoints particularly, but they are sending emails. So you can kind of choose what path you want to take. And then those combine, and when you complete the 2 prerequisites and 3 of the 5 other ones, you earn this accessibility proponent badge, and that's triggered automatically. Now this is we're calling that a completion badge. It's an end of a pathway, and so there are ways so the pathway could be a degree, it could be an associate degree, it could be a certificate, Microsoft certificate or something like that. But we're calling that a completion. So we've actually had a lot of people actually want to complete this accessibility proponent badge, even though, I mean, it's actually offered automatically, but they're actually keen. It's kind of been a nice motivational effort. People have wanted to complete at least 3 of these so they can get that accessibility proponent badge. We've spent some time on this, and I think we're going to spend more time on this. It's a badge taxonomy, and we were inspired by the Digital Credentials Institute badge taxonomy. This is similar to theirs, but we're trying to get at how would we classify the badges? On the far left, we have a participation badge, and the key parts of this is, what is the activity represented by that? Well, that's attend a presentation or workshop, or maybe even get a badge for the recognition. The assessment, well, there's really not much assessment. Maybe you literally take attendance, or you require somebody to show that they actually were at that conference. Now, SUNY made the point that they're not really focusing on those, and we won't really focus on those when we work with colleges and students, because we just want to have a placeholder for that. We may use that, and it may signal other things that we might be interested in. For instance, in K-12, we might have people that go to science museums, or are attending the local drone club or whatever. Those kinds of participation badges may actually tell us, oh, this is an interest to them. And as we come into community college, maybe they'll be interested in a STEM degree. So we think they'll be valuable. They just don't really tell us much. They may tell us about interest, but not much about knowledge or skill. And then we have these 3 badges, that knowledge, skill, and application. They're kind of what you would expect. They're meant to be to kind of build on each other, or be in a bit of a hierarchy. And we put these 3, and it's not necessarily the case that your course or whatever would issue all 3. But it is kind of implicitly that when you're doing an application, you're trying to do a more contextualized thing. So if you're performing a piece of music, the skill are, can you play your scales? Can you play in tune? Do you know how to read notes? Or set up auto automobile testing regimen and do a re-diagnose automobile engines, and there are various pieces of that knowledge and skill. So you might just give this application badge without necessarily having these other badges, and that might be true because you don't necessarily want to give lots of little badges. And then on the far right, we've had this completion badge, and that could be pathway, the end of a pathway, and I think that's ironically kind of what we're going to use it for. The end of a pathway is kind of marks that you completed a whole series of learning activities and badge earning. It's not really a stackable badge per se. It's a collection of badges that represent something. And we've changed the look of it because it's kind of it's semantically kind of different than the others, and so we changed the look of that one. All right, so that I'm not going to go much in detail, but I wanted to say, why is it that we're interested in badges? And I have to say that even though I feel like we're really at the start of our badging effort, even though we've been at it for a year and a half, one of the big reasons for us to be doing this is because of the work that IMS Global is doing. And I put some things exactly from the IMS Global website. It closely, ACRO, NASPA, IMS Open Badges, case standards, and W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, all are working together on these standards. We're credential engine and is the big database of all the credentials. They're now a case consumer. All this stuff is actually coming together in interesting ways that's going to impact us. Our effort in badges is going to lay the foundation for our efforts in case, CLR, and pathways. Pathways are being talked about in these other contexts. There's no standard as yet. Except actually in the CLR standard, there are some things on pathways. So that's one reason we're actually trying to do this badging effort. And so that's where we will expand our use. We'll continue to expand our use of badges for professional development. We're planning to expand our use of pathways across our community colleges so that, for instance, our e-learning departments would offer some accessibility training or online training. They could take some of our badges, they could use their own badges. And that's an effort that we're starting very soon. So that's looking forward. So I'll leave it at that. And
thank you, Steve. As we transition, I have just a few things that I'm going to share with you a little bit.
Okay, let me stop share. I think there we go.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to try to move through my information kind of quickly so we still have some time for questions at the end. After the presentation, we will be sharing all the slides and the recording, and if you have follow-up questions, we can try to answer those at another point. So for those of you who aren't aware of IMS Global, you've heard a little bit about us so far, but we are a nonprofit that really is focusing on making sure we're having better technology to improve your learning environment. So making sure that things can scale and you have good educational access to those different tools. So one of the things that we focus on is digital credentials. We also have a much wider portfolio of initiatives we're supporting. If you're interested in learning more, you can read our annual Learning Impact Award report. And this is the 2019 report that highlights some of these initiatives. You can see digital credentials is one of the areas that we're supporting. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check out that link. I'll skip over this. So you've heard a little bit about some of the things we're supporting. So our foundations for digital credentials really include open badges, which you heard a lot about today, the comprehensive learner record, and the competencies and academic standards exchange, or CASE as we call it. So the open badges is really a standard for all of the digital badges that can be issued to make sure that they are portable between different badge platforms or different places you would want to publish your different achievements as well as be able to receive them from various different points. The comprehensive learner record allows you to collect all of those achievements in a standard way. And then the competencies exchange, or the case exchange, allows you to align those different achievements with your framework. So whether they're academic achievements or professional certifications, those kinds of professional certification standards, you can align those achievements with that work. So a little bit more about the open badge standard is, the nice thing about it is more than just a pretty picture. It includes the data inside that allows it to be verifiable, machine readable. The learners can control where those badges get shared. You heard mention of the backpack. So if you earn a badge in Badger or Credly, you can move those around to wherever you would like them to be, for the student to be able to share that information as they see it would benefit for them. The Comprehensive Learner Record, or CLR as we like to call it, is really a way for learners to be able to aggregate all of their various learning experiences. As we know, students are learning in a variety of ways at a variety of institutions through their lifetime, or even with their employer. So what the CLR is designed to do is it really allows a learner to be able to pool all of those relevant achievements together in a way that would allow them to maybe apply for admissions to a school or into an employment situation. And that the nice thing about it is verifiable. So all of that data that's hidden within the badge is actually able to be verified through that CLR. It also could be done by a machine. So, we hear from some employers who have large number of applications that they're using an algorithm to go through and verify which applicants they're going to screen by a person or not. So these are all designed to kind of support that effort that is happening. And then, like I said, our case standard allows you to really align your learning outcomes, your competencies, your rubrics to some of those achievements. So that way you can see what really does the achievement in remote piloting a drone mean, what standards are below that, or what competencies have been met for them to be able to earn that achievement. All right, and I think we have about 2 minutes left for any follow-up Q&A that may have happened. And like I said before, we will follow up to everybody who's registered with a copy of this recording as well as our slides. So one of the questions that I see out there is, have any of you used badging to drive student engagement in co-curricular opportunities?
Yeah, and I just put in a quick reply, and we haven't yet at SBCTC, but I have. There's a strong interest, and I've had some really good meetings with our community colleges on that. We have several who are starting to do that, but there's basically no results yet. But that's a big use case for us. That co-curricular is kind of really important for our community colleges.
I know some of our other institutional partners are doing that, not only in their maybe leadership programs through their student organization areas, as well as their career services. Maybe there's some achievements they've met through internships or things there as well.
And I will say that one of the, and again, I think in a way we're choosing the simple route. As you could see from SUNY's work, it's a lot of work to kind of get this all fit into the academic thing. So we've kind of taken the easy route for now, which is, with co-curricular, with professional development, we don't have to spend a lot of time going to faculty governance councils and setting policies and stuff. So that's helping us a lot because we're just on a shoestring here. But I think we really need to look ahead at doing the kind of work that SUNY's doing.
And with that, we are at the top of the hour. Like I said, we will have follow-up information. So if you have more questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, feel free to follow back up with me and I can try to get those answered. If you're coming to the League for Innovations Conference in a couple of weeks, check out our presentation there. Also, there's a couple of IMS Global events that might be of interest to you, as well as some other information for you to be able to stay connected and learn some more information. So thank you very much.